do something.
Wow, when you break it down.
In this video, we'll take a look at a pocket full of bone-chilling true crime cases that unfolded on Halloween night. Late October is a time of the year that is undeniably awesome. Who doesn't love to be just a little bit scared? Free candy and dressing up in costumes, unleashing our alter egos. It's the ultimate come as you aren't party. But, my friends, not all Halloween tales are just harmless fun. There are those that have taken things just a little too far and crossed over into the realm of true darkness. While Halloween is perfect on its own, we can't deny that there are some people who are just doing too much. Lisa Ann French was born on June 2nd, 1964 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. She lived in Fond du Lac with her mom, stepdad, and baby brother, just a stone's throw away from where Gerald Miles Turner Jr. lived. On Halloween night, 1973, Turner was living with his girlfriend Arlene Penn and their little baby. It turns out that Lisa and Turner knew each other before that night. Lisa used to hang out with Turner and Arlene and their baby, and they would have regular chats. Actually, Turner used to live in the same duplex as Lisa's family. Unbeknownst to Lisa and her family, Turner had molested a 15-year-old babysitter in the past. On Halloween night, 1973, Lisa left her house about 5:45 p.m., all dressed up as a hobo. She had a black felt hat, a green parka, jeans with tape on them, and freckles on her cheeks. Originally, she was supposed to go to a party with her friend Ann Parker, but Ann got grounded, so Lisa ended up trick-or-treating alone. Apparently, Lisa made stops at a classmate's house and a teacher's house to pick up some candy before heading to Turner's place. Turner later confessed that Lisa rang his doorbell, said trick-or-treat, and walked right in with her candy bag. They started chatting, and then Turner somehow convinced Lisa to go to his bedroom. And that's where he SA'd and killed her. Turner claimed that Lisa had stopped breathing right after the assault, and he tried to revive her, but he got interrupted when his girlfriend, Arlene Penn, came home. Actually, Arlene had been at the party that Lisa was supposed to go to. She had a black felt hat, a green parka, jeans with tape on them, and freckles on her cheeks. Originally, she was supposed to go to a party with her friend Ann Parker, but Ann got grounded, so Lisa ended up trick-or-treating alone. Apparently, Lisa made stops at a classmate's house and a teacher's house to pick up some candy before heading to Turner's place. Turner later confessed that Lisa rang his doorbell, said trick-or-treat, and walked right in with her candy bag. They started chatting, and then Turner somehow convinced Lisa to go to his bedroom. And that's where he SA'd and killed her. Turner claimed that Lisa had stopped breathing right after the assault, and he tried to revive her, but he got interrupted when his girlfriend, Arlene Penn, came home. Actually, Arlene had been at the party that Lisa was supposed to go to. Very nearly caught in the act, Turner pretended to be sick. He was wearing a bathrobe, and he kept going back and forth to the bedroom to lie down. There was a body back there. Fortunately for that nugget, Arlene had to go visit her mother. So as soon as she left, Turner stuffed Lisa's body and her clothes into 2 separate bags and drove to Taycheedah, Wisconsin, and dumped her body in a field off McCabe Road. He was careful not to leave any fingerprints behind, wearing socks on his hands and wiping down Lisa's shoes and her parka zipper. Meanwhile, Lisa's mom, Mary Ann Gehrig, started to get worried when Lisa wasn't home by her 7 p.m. curfew, and by 10 p.m., a full-blown search party was sent out to look for her. On November 3rd, 1973, a farmer named Gerald Brown found something devastating on his property. He discovered 2 bags behind a fence, one containing the body of Lisa Ann French, and the other one was holding her Halloween costume. It was determined that Lisa had been SA'd and had died from asphyxiation. Her funeral was just a few days later, and a reward was offered for any information leading to the capture of the killer. Turner had been under suspicion since the start, but after 9 months of questioning by the police, he finally confessed. In 1975, Turner was sentenced to 38.5 years in prison. In an undated letter written to Lisa by Turner while he was in prison, he describes how frightening this attack had been for her. Quote, "I doubt I could ever fully realize the terror you experienced at my hands. I can still see you standing in the doorway with that felt hat, beaming at having recognized me. Then I see the delight in your eyes turn to fear as I close the door behind you." End quote. Gross. There's a lot more to this story if you're interested. It gets kind of bananas. He was let out early on parole, ended up going back to prison for doing some crazy thing to his parole officer. I mean, of course, what were they thinking? I think part of the problem is that that's just how the justice system was back then. I mean, they let the broomstick killer and the mad chopper out of prison early. And if you don't know who they are, well, those are stories for another time. In October of 2009, a 75-year-old man's decomposing body sat on his Marina del Rey balcony for days, unnoticed by his neighbors, who mistook him for a Halloween decoration. Mustafa Mahad Zayed had been dead for a couple of days with a self-deleting wound to the eye. Apparently, neighbors saw the body but thought it was a mannequin used for Halloween decorations, so they didn't bother calling the authorities. I mean, I do that. No judgment here. The LA coroner's office was called on a Thursday evening, but by that Friday, the scene was cleared and life went on as usual in the complex. One neighbor described Zayed as a friendly and well-dressed man. The body was in plain view of the entire apartment complex, and they all didn't do anything, one witness said. "It's very strange. It did look unreal, to be honest." One visitor to the area said the complex seemed a little lonely, and there was hardly anybody around. He said he wasn't surprised to hear that a dead man went undiscovered for a few days. He said, quote, "There doesn't seem to be a lot of community involvement," end quote, to say the least. On Halloween night in 2011, unsuspecting 18-year-old Taylor Van Diest left her home in Armstrong, British Columbia to meet a friend. Little did she know a lurking presence had set its sight upon her. Feeling a sense of unease, she reached out for help through text messages. But suddenly, her pleas were just silent. It was as if she disappeared into the night, leaving no trace behind. Hours later, a horrifying discovery was made near some desolate railroad tracks. Taylor's battered body was found there, bearing a savage and life-threatening wounds to her head. Rushed to the hospital in a desperate attempt to save her life, she ultimately succumbed to the brutality. DNA evidence pointed a damning finger at 26-year-old man named Matthew Forrester. The details of the crime suggested that what was started as an attempted SA quickly spiraled into an abyss of terror when Taylor fought back, screaming for her life. Forrester then panicked, leading him to repeatedly bludgeon her head mercilessly with a blunt object. Her final text message had been, "I'm being creeped on." It's understandable when two 5-year-olds fight over a bag of candy, but two adults? Back in 2011, on the streets of Chicago's South Side, a seemingly innocent Halloween turned into a nightmare. Liddell Peoples, a 55-year-old man, was convinced that his girlfriend Maria Adams, a 49-year-old woman, had swiped his precious bag of Halloween treats. As their voices rose, an argument broke out, but the horror was just beginning. In a fit of rage and madness, Maria hurled a plate straight at people's head. The sharp sound of the shattering porcelain filled the air as the plate struck him with a sickening thud, leaving a gash above his eye. And those always hurt. Right there, it's really sensitive. Fueled by Maria's blatant disrespect, people's eyes fixated on a weapon nearby, a knife. Gripping it tightly in his trembling hand, he unleashed a flurry of savage stabs upon Maria. The echoes of her cries for mercy fell on deaf ears as her life was brutally extinguished. It's candy, y'all. Go puff. Like a horror movie come to life, a masked murderer straight out of a slasher flick decided to make his debut in the real world. In the dark and twisted events of Halloween 2013, a 19-year-old Brooklyn resident named Anthony Seabury was shot and killed while minding his own business. And who was his assailant? Well, none other than a wannabe horror movie villain, donning the iconic ghost face mask from the Scream franchise. Would Michael Myers have been too obvious on Halloween? I don't know. Here's where things get even more absurd. Despite all the clues, the case remains unsolved, although some people believe that this shooting was connected to a series of other incidents that plagued the streets of New York City that fateful Halloween night. One of the suspects involved in those other incidents met his own demise during a shootout with the cops. Seems fair. Now, we all know that egging houses and cars is a classic Halloween prank, right? Well, on Halloween night, 1998, in the rough and tumble streets of the South Bronx, poor Carl Jackson, after a long day at work and then a night of trick-or-treating with his girlfriend and her little tyke, was in no mood for his car to become an omelet. But fate had something else in mind for Carl. So there he was, all fired up and ready to confront the punk that had just turned his ride into a breakfast buffet. When Carl stepped out of his car, ready to give that kid a piece of his mind, he was taking a big risk. Sometimes risks don't pay off. In this case, they ended in tragedy. 17-year-old Curtis Sterling, the egg-flinging culprit, decided to escalate things to a whole nother level. He pulled out a gun and without hesitation, he shot Carl right in the head. Just like that, Carl's life was snuffed out in an instant. The authorities wasted no time putting Curtis behind bars where he rightfully belongs. Charged with murder, he was locked up for life. But the story doesn't end there. Every Halloween, Carl Jackson's mother sends a Halloween card to her son's killer. She's just letting him know how glad she is that he's rotting away in that cold and desolate cell. Also fair. According to an informal tally by the New York Times in 2010, at least 24 people between 1984 and 2010 were seriously wounded or killed in stabbings, shootings, beatings, or accidents sparked by egg-throwing confrontations around Halloween. Halloween is the time for tricks and treats, but it seems that dentist William Shine took the trick part of that a tad too seriously back in 1959. This mischievous dentist had a diabolical plan. Dr. Shine, in all his wisdom, decided to spice up the Halloween festivities by giving out tricks along with the treats. He handed out candy-coated laxatives. Yes, laxatives. Besides the obvious answer of this guy really hates kids, what possessed Dr. Shine to pass out candy-coated laxatives. Maybe he just wanted to give their digestive systems a good cleaning. Regardless, approximately 450 unsuspecting children received the laxatives. As you can imagine, the consequences were rather explosive. 30 of those poor souls actually ate these candies, and violent sickness ensued, turning Halloween into a night of toilet terror for these unfortunate trick-or-treaters. Authorities swiftly got to the bottom of things and traced the laxatives back to Dr. Shine, who found himself facing a multitude of charges, including outrage of public decency, I'll say, and the unlawful dispensing of drugs. What a mess. Well, that's it for me. I've got to take my own kiddo out to get his own tricks and treats. Yikes. We'll stay vigilant. Remember, be cool to yourself and be cool to others. Keep the eggs in the fridge. Don't go to a dentist's house on Halloween, because I care about what happens to you. Bye.
Wow, when you break it down.